1, 2, 3, 4. Hey everybody, Gary Heimbauer here with Guitar Tricks, and in this video I'm going to show you the 4 most essential chords to know on guitar. If I could only know 4 chords to play as many songs as possible, I would choose G, D, E minor, and C. Now if I also happen to have one of these cool devices, a capo, I can move that around and use these 4 chords to open up thousands of more songs that I could play. So I'm going to show you how to play these chords. I'll give you a couple different options on each chord, and then I'm going to give you a really popular chord progression that uses these 4 chords, and we'll go over how to switch between each chord in the chord progression. But before we get into any of that, please go ahead and click the subscribe button so that you get all the latest and greatest content from Guitar Tricks. All right, here we go. So the first chord is G. So as you can see from the diagram, we put our second finger on the 3rd fret of the 6th string or the low E string. We put our first finger on the 2nd fret of the 5th string or the A string. Then we play the next 3 strings open. And then we put our 3rd finger on the 3rd fret of the 1st string or the high E string. So G obviously requires a big stretch, right? We've got a note on the low E string and a note on the high E string. So one problem that beginners run into with this one is that this second finger flattens out and it mutes the A string or the 5th string. So my tip for that is try to bring your thumb down if you're experiencing that. Try to keep a nice arc in your wrist, and the thumb should be relaxed and straight up and down behind the neck. So it's not sideways, it's not like that, it's not flexed. It's just relaxed and straight up and down on the back of the neck. I'm going to drop my wrist a little like I'm holding a bowling ball. And then I'm going to try to get my whole hand out in front of the guitar and then put the fingers down. Okay, so in general with all these chords, we want to press straight into the note. We want to get as much of a 90-degree angle with our fingertip and the fretboard as possible. But on a chord like G with a big stretch, that's not going to be possible, especially with this second finger. So what the second finger can do to compensate for that is try to press down the string with the lower part of the tip. With the other fingers, you want the bony tip right in the middle. But with this second finger on the low E string, you're going to try to get somewhere between the tip and the pad. This will also help you clear the A string so that both of these ring out and you're not blocking it. All right. Now you'll also notice that my fingers are really close to the fret wire. This makes it easier and you don't have to apply as much pressure when your finger is close to the fret wire. So not on top of it, but right behind it. And I do that with all my fingers. So you don't want to be back in the fret. That requires you to press harder. If you're nice and close to the fret, you don't have to press as hard. So in general, we're going to try to do that. And then you can test yourself, see if they're all ringing out. Now if you're having a lot of trouble getting that A string to ring out, it's still okay. The chord will still sound great and no one will really care and you will probably not even notice. So although you want to aspire to get all of the strings to ring out, don't worry too much if that A is getting blocked. You can still play your song that uses the G chord. Now, if you want to simplify it even further, a lot of times with beginner students, I start with this G, where we just remove strings 5 and 6 altogether, and then all we need is open 4th, open 3rd, open 2nd, and then the 3rd fret on the E string, 1st string, and play those 4 together. All right, there we go. Now one other option, which at first will seem difficult, but in reality will make life a lot easier, especially when you're switching from a G chord to a C chord, is instead of using fingers 2, 1, and 3, use fingers 3, 2, and 4, like this. Some people call this the pinky G. the reason why I find this shape really useful is look at how easy it is to switch to the C chord, which we're going to go over next. You see that? I barely have to move my hand, as opposed to this shape. Big movement, right? So if I use the pinky G, it's very easy. So something to work up to, and you might want to try it straight away and see how it feels. Okay, so then the C chord, we still have a pretty big stretch, but the bigger stretch this way is across the fretboard because we have the first finger on the first fret and the third finger on the third fret. Okay, so here's how we build this one. We've got on the 5th string, third finger on the 3rd fret. On the 4th string, second finger on the 2nd fret. Open 3rd string, and then first finger on the 1st fret of the 2nd string, and then open 1st string, high E string. Now, if you're getting confused, I'm counting the strings from toes to nose. So 1 is here and 6 is here. Okay. Now, we play strings 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and we don't play the low E string. What I like to do to block off the low E string is again use the tip of this finger to just graze the low E string. So I might, just like I did with the G chord, I might come a little lower on the tip so that I can graze that low E string, and that's enough to stop it from ringing, and then I could strum more freely, like this. Okay. Now, if you do get the low E string, it won't sound bad. It might sound a little weird sometimes, but it's not like a bad note. It's actually a note. The note E is found within the C chord. But in general, I like to block it out. Something to keep in mind. Okay, now just like with the G chord, we can play a 3-string version of the C chord like this. We can just use that first finger and not play the lower 3 strings. And then we would have G and C. Now with C, you definitely want to aspire to press straight into the notes, right? So dropping that thumb, keeping that wrist rounded, and again trying to get right close up against the fret, not on top of it, but right behind it. So if your fingers are flattening out like this, it might mean your hand is too compressed and we want to create space, like holding a bowling ball. Next, we have the D chord. Now there's only one way to play this D chord in this area of the neck, and it's like this. So there's no simplified version, but what's great about the D is all the fingers are nice and close together. There's no big stretch, but there is a kind of weird contortion because you have your first finger here on the 2nd fret of the 3rd string, the G string. Your second finger skips a string and is on the 2nd fret of the high E string, or the 1st string, and then your 3rd comes up in between the two on the 3rd fret of the B. And then you play the open D string with them. Now, I like to say for this chord, instead of trying to get your hand out in front, it's like you're watching TV on your hand. So your hand is facing your face. Hand faces the face. It's not facing up in the air. It's kind of on an angle. And this allows you to kind of go like this with your fingertips and get that shape. And then last but not least, we have the E minor. And this one is perhaps the easiest of all. We just take our 1st and 2nd finger and put it right on the 2nd fret of the A and the D string, or the 5th and the 4th string. So 1st finger on the 2nd fret of the A, 2nd finger on the 2nd fret of the D. Awesome. Now sometimes I like to use fingers 2 and 3 instead. Especially if I'm doing that pinky G, see, because then I can leave one of the fingers down. So that's something to experiment with. Now, of course, the easy version of this chord, if we took out strings 6, 5, and 4, would just be the open first 3 strings. Then we would have G, C, E minor, D. All right, so to recap, we've got G, or like this, or like this. We've got C, or like this. We've got E minor, Or like this. And we've got D. Okay, so now I'm going to give you one of the most popular chord progressions there is, and that is G, D, E minor, C. Okay, so we're going to play through it, but first let's talk about some of the switches we have. So from G to D, the first finger just comes down 2 strings. The second one has the biggest movement because it's got to come from here down to here, and then the third one just comes up 1 string. Right? So go really slow with your fingers. First, before you switch, visualize where each finger's going. And then just watch every finger and try to figure out what is the most efficient movement. A lot of people, when they start switching, they take their whole hand off, put it back. But in general, you really just want to kind of skate across the frets and try to get each finger to go where it has to go as directly as possible. So watch that motion, first finger coming down, third finger coming up, second finger coming diagonal, and then just work on that switch. Okay, then from the D, we're going to go to the E minor. Now this is going to be really easy. We just take those first 2 fingers, slide them up to the 2nd fret of the A and the D string, or the 4th and the 5th string. And the 3rd finger doesn't have to do anything. And then from the E to the C, we could actually leave our 2nd finger down and just take that first one down to here and the 3rd one put right in place. See how that 3rd one's hanging out. It's ready to go. All right, so now I'm going to put on my trusty metronome. I've got it set for 80 beats per minute. It's a little fast. Let's go 75. All right, I've got it at 75. And this is what we're going to do. We're going to play 1 measure of each chord. So 1 measure of G, 3, 4, 1 measure of D, 3, 4, 1 measure of E minor, 3, 4, 1 measure of C. And we're going to do 4 beats of each. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, but as you saw, I want you to just play on the first beat of the measure. Now, I held the chord out all 4 beats, but you can go like this. Watch this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. You could take those extra 3 beats in each measure and use them to switch, so it'll give you time to get to the next chord. So the goal here is just to play on time with me so that you could stay within the rhythm. So play on that first beat, take the time to get to the next one. Now, if you're starting to feel more advanced, try to play on 2 beats and then switch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. And ultimately, you might want to do all 4 beats. 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so we're going to start on just 1 beat. Then I'm going to do 2 beats, and then I'm going to do all 4. Okay, here we go. Oh, 1, 2, here we go. 2, 3, 4, D. 2, 3, 4, E minor, 2, 3, 4, C, 2, 3, 4, G, 2, 3, 4, D, 2, 3, 4, E minor, 2. All right, now I'm going to play on the first 2 beats. Switch now, switch now, switch now. One more time like that. Now switch. Now switch. Now switch. Okay. Now all 4 beats. Oh, 1, 2, here we go. All right, everybody, I hope you had a great time with that lesson. If you want to learn a bunch of different songs with G, D, E minor, and C by artists you know and love, check out the guitartricks.com song library. If you want to see more lessons like this, go ahead and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next lesson.